It's me, Turbo Cellboy, back with another tutorial on how to game like a cool person on Linux. That's right. And so today I'm going to be focusing on getting a game to work that's from the era that is mostest hardest to play on Linux, which of course is the era from like 1999 to like 2015-ish. So modern games, particularly indie ones, are much better about offering like Linux options to play with. But I will say this era of Windows games, oh god, it sucks ass. But thankfully, Wine is actually good now. Back when I first started using Wine, it wasn't so good, but now it's great. So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be installing a game that we will do on this channel eventually, which is Left Behind 3: Rise of the Antichrist. No, not the movie. No, it's a video game from like the OG, before there were any good movies. Or, well, honestly, there's never really been a good Left Behind movie. So I got this from abandonware, which this game is just totally lost. Like nobody's gonna come after you for having this one, right? So what we got here is I'm gonna be doing this on Linux. Let me just build this up. So first off, we gotta get it to a point where it's a CD, right? So most of the time when you download abandonware or you have like if you have an actual CD, this is a little bit easier. But what I'm gonna do is I've got two options. One is a no CD crack, which is basically an altered exe, so I don't need the CD. And the other one is the actual CD itself, which is ISO file. Now, if it's not an ISO file, you're going to have to mount it slightly differently. But for ISO games, this should work very well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click here, and if you're using pretty much any version of Linux that's like either Debian-based or CentOS or, you know, the Fedora stuff, you should be able to just open it with Disk Image Mounter, right? And so what you'll see is over here, this ISO is popped up as a file system. So now the thing is that you've got your exe right there. You got your help exe, you got a launcher, you got all this stuff, right? You can't just start it. Like you could with Wine and it might work, it might not. But what you're going to need is to create what's called a Wine prefix, which is basically a virtual drive. Now, thankfully, because of years of development, there has been quite a lot of improvements to the graphical front end for Wine. So what we're going to do, number one, you're going to want some software installed. So we're going to go through that now. So first of all, you're going to need Wine Trick. You're going to need Wine, right? Wine is it comes with most things, but it's the Windows program loader. So Wine, of course, stands for Wine is not an emulator. It's not. All that Wine does is it translates Windows kernel commands into Linux kernel commands. So you got to remember the Linux kernel and the Windows kernel are not similar. So my understanding, and I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure that Linux is a monolithic kernel and Windows is some kind of weird like microkernel thing. I don't know. I don't get it. But the thing is structurally they're quite different, so it requires slightly different calls to the hardware. So Wine acts as a layer that basically interprets a software's request to what would otherwise be a Windows machine and interprets that for Linux. So the key thing that you're going to want is you're going to want Wine. You don't necessarily need Wine Tricks, but it helps. And then, of course, I'm going to be using the graphical front end for Wine, which is Play on Linux, which is the best one I've found for me personally. There's some issues with it, but that's fine. So the number one thing is, you know, with Play on Linux, which you can get in the software store, it's a sleek little front end, and it also is really helpful when you're like just poking around trying to figure stuff out. So I'm going to be doing this with the Play on Linux front end, and so I want to install a program, right? Now, initially it's going to give me a bunch of like, you know, it's going to try and load a giant freaking list, and I don't care. Some things are available online and like pre-designed. So what we're going to do is I start it, and it's like, I want to install, and it's like, don't change the directory. We're not Wine HQ. I don't know what Wine HQ is. I'm not going to worry about it. So what instead I'm going to do is I'm going to use this installation wizard, and I'm going to want to install a program on a new virtual drive. All right. Now, key thing here is this is an actual directory, so it can't have like a bunch of spaces and weird stuff. So I'm just going to call it Rise of the Antichrist. Much like anything. There's a bunch of additional options. I'm not going to worry about that right now. So the key here when you're installing any Windows game is you got to remember what era is it from. All right. So if it's past like 2012-ish, almost everything's going to be 64-bit and it's going to be fine. Everything before that, it's probably going to want a 32-bit installation. So we're just going to do the 32-bit. All right. Now you can't see it, but we got this little wine thing. It's building the prefix. So the prefix is the virtual drive that this is going to live in. Think of it as like it's building a tiny little Windows computer right there in your drive, and it's going to have a bunch of weird configurations. So now we got to find the file to run. So I'm just going to go ahead and open this. So we know that it's on this fake CD, because remember, this is entirely a digital file. It exists on my drive, which of course, because I'm cool, is an NVMe, so it's going to be wicked fast, way faster than a CD ever would be. Now, I have to figure out which is the correct file, but given that this file is 1.3 gigabytes, and it's, let's see, it's called setup.exe, that's probably the one. Let's just take a gander. All right, so we got setup.exe, let's hit next. All right, you're going to Play on Linux is installing your application. So immediately this guy popped up right here. Welcome to Left Behind 3, Rise of the Antichrist, Setup Wizard. Oh, it's a wizard. It's not very good. Not good evangelical Christians right here. It's recommended that you close all other applications. Well, sadly, modern computers run way too many applications in the background. Let's see the license agreement, software product, Left Behind 3, Rise of the Antichrist. Read this as an end user license agreement with the company that doesn't exist. If you're under the age of 18, please have a parent or guardian read this entire EULA prior to installing or otherwise using the software product. All right, let's just go on down. Let's see, entire agreement. Oh, it's a DivX. There's DivX in this? What? I thought, well, I guess it was 2010. They still had it, I guess. All right, let's accept the agreement. So notice it's got a C directory, but because I'm using Linux, I actually don't have a C drive. So what it's going to do is it's basically the wine prefix is a fake C drive for it to go into. Kind of a lot like DOSBox. Left Behind Games, Rise of the Antichrist. We don't need to create a desktop icon because that's not going to work. And there we go. So let's install. So first of all, you're going to notice something. Despite the fact that this is all just moving from one side of a entirely solid state drive to another, it is taking some time to unpack because it does have to run the code. And the thing here is that like this is way faster than it would have been on a CD drive back in the day. But there's limits to how much it can use. So this is a 32-bit system. It can't map or use. I've got what? 32 gigs in this computer. Now, granted, most of that right now is being devoted to recording, but there's probably about 10 gigs available for this program, but it can't use it. It can only use 4 of it, and it probably isn't even going to use that. So just keep that in mind when you're installing some of these older games, particularly if you're doing a 32-bit installation for Wine. It's never going to be able to map more than 4 gigabytes. Also, let's be realistic. I don't know how good the graphics are going to do because, again, I have open source drivers for the system. There's going to be some weirdness. I'll just say that. I've had games where everything loaded except for like one texture. So there's some weird stuff that happens. Also, most of this installation has been textures.pack, which is, that tells me some things right there about what they spent their time on this game. It's an RTS, so it can't be that many textures. Oh! Carpathia4.avi, credits.avi, genesis.avi. Ooh, Genesis. Ooh, we gotta get some Bible knowledge thrown on you. I played the Captive Bible game a while back, and now we're gonna switch over to Rise of the Antichrist here. This is gonna be great. Let's see, you got news15.avi. Oh, did that Windows thing where it sorts the 10s as above the 2. Revelation.avi. Ooh. And it's also installing a bunch of DirectX shit, so we'll just worry about that later. Come on, baby, let's go. Installing DirectX. Now, this is where sometimes these installations break down. Y'all couldn't see it, but on other screens, a bunch of stuff started flashing and disappearing, so that's cool. I'm gonna finish this setup. All right, so please wait. Scanning virtual drive. Okay, good, it went through it. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm pretty sure that is like lb3rota.exe with the little icon there. Pretty sure that's Left Behind 3 Rise of the Antichrist.exe, but that's too long of a name for a 32-bit Windows system. So we'll just call this lb3rota. I'm sure I'll remember that. All right, so now with Play on Linux, it's going to like endlessly cycle. Like, what more shortcuts do you want? What more shortcuts do you want? Now, you could just press cancel, or you could scroll up here and say, I don't want to make another shortcut. All right, so now we got this installed. So in theory, it should be playable, but there's a couple of steps we're going to take. So number one, I'm going to close this. Okay, I'm going to open this back up, and we're going to go over here to my downloads, and we're going to go to the Antichrist folder. and I'm going to go ahead and extract the no CD. So a lot of the time with these no CDs, all you're going to do, some of them will have readmes, which is really handy. And I really appreciate whoever went to the trouble to make this, because it's not as easy as, like, most of the time it's not as easy as just going into the code and be like no CD.jpg. Like, you have to do some coding, and I don't have the knowledge for that. Nobody does. So now the nice thing about Play on Linux is you could just go to the home folder and you can go to Play on Linux's virtual drives, right? And then we go Rise of the Antichrist, Drive C. It's probably under program files because at this era, people didn't really use program data as much. So let's see, Left Behind Games, Rise of the Antichrist. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and paste this right here. So you'll notice that there's a bunch of, like, there's that exe, and if the other one was called server.dynamic link library, or DIL. So we'll just go ahead and replace. And I guess there wasn't. Why are there two server? That's going to create. I'm sure that won't cause a problem later. So now, a lot of the time, the default setup may not work. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit run and see what happens. Now, my guess is that it's going to try to open a window. It's going to try to run in full screen. Oh, hey, well, that's a good sign because this popped up. Let's see, by providing Left Behind 3 Rise of the Antichrist registration. Let's see, by providing your email below, you're indicated you would like to receive free game updates, which include bug fixes and new features. Your email address will be kept privately with strict confidentiality, only for information and offers from LB Games, and such email will not be shared with any second or third party whatsoever. Well, let's see, we got Turbals. Cellbore, my email address. I don't want to dox myself. Let's see. Compliance with the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA. We do not allow children under 13 to register or submit requests. Well, good there. I'm older than 13. Let's see. Left Behind Games will not intentionally collect personally identifiable information for children under 13. By submitting your information, you're certifying you are 13 or older. Well, I'll just register later. All right. Do you want to check for game update? I don't like how it's going over to the other screen all the time. Let's see. Do you want to check for game updates? No, I don't. I would just like to play the game. Now, I have a sneaking suspicion that it's going to try to open a window in about 10 seconds. But sometimes it'll just time out. And if that happens, we're going to have to do some digging here to try and make this work. Because, sometimes it doesn't work as easy as you think it will. Yeah, it's been a while and nothing's coming up, so I'm gonna go ahead. So the nice thing about Play on Linux is it has a built-in kill switch. So we're just gonna hit close up there, and it's gonna take a sec, and then this little guy will pop up, and it's like we encountered error, and you want to zoom out. It got the, I don't know why it does this as a. So this crashed. That's probably because I initiated it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into configure. So some of the things that will help. Number one, the nice thing about this particular version of a Wine front end is it's very user friendly. It's got a nice GUI. Warning to the wise, they do use some weird Python calls. So if it tries to run and it doesn't work, try updating your Python or updating your system, and it usually works. But let's see. All right, so we're going to go to configure Wine. So configuring Wine is usually the solution to all life's problems when it comes to trying to run a Windows game. Now, I did get this to work on a system running a Renoir processor, but I don't know if it's going to work on this one. So first of all, Windows version, Windows 10. So the thing is, Windows 10 did not exist when this game came out. In fact, it would probably be much better to use Windows Vista in this scenario because it was probably written for Windows Vista. All right, so we're going to apply that. So I would recommend changing one thing at a time. Like, don't go overboard. So let's go ahead. We're going to run LB3ROTA. It's going to ask me to register, but I'm going to register later. And let's see what happens here. Interesting. Okay, nothing happened there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to close it again. We're going to do something a little different. We're going to go down here. So remember, there was two server.dils. I bet you one of those is bad and the other one is good. So we're just going to go to Rise of the Antichrist drive. So I'm just going to leave this directory open because we're probably going to need to go in there a few times. All right, so Rise of the Antichrist. So we had two server.dils. One's capital, one's lowercase. One's from December 10th, one's from September 16th. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to call this rename server.dil. I'm just going to call OG so it doesn't try to call it. And then we're going to go down here to server.dil, and I'm going to rename this. It's going to be capitalized. Now, I don't know why they had a server.dil in there. I don't know how relevant that is to the CD crack, and we may have to keep the CD in there. So I'm also going to eject that file system right there because it might be interfering with it. So let's try it again. Still not working. All right, so all we got to do, got to close it down again. There's a couple of things we can do. So now sometimes when you run these things, even though that's got the Windows Vista, maybe the Windows Vista isn't working. And remember, it's a 32-bit installation. So what we're going to do here is so it's right now it's set to Windows Vista. I'm going to change this over to Windows XP because that's like a bedrock one. Like a lot of these things were written for Windows XP. Windows XP had a really long usage life. So once again, I will register now. Failed to receive required information. Registered failed. Registration failed. Okay. Still waiting on it. Give it a couple of minutes here. We'll just hold on. No good. No good whatsoever. So we're going to close that again. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the configuration. So now it's failing to start the software. There's a couple of things you could do. You could look at the debug, but I usually don't start going into like the logs until like things get really, like I really can't get it. So I'm going to configure it again. And what we're going to do, I'm going to leave it on XP because it's just not, it's starting the application, but it's not initiating the graphics. So one of the things we could do is we can emulate a virtual desktop. So I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to do a resolution that I'm confident it can do, which is 1920 by 1080. I'm going to still allow the window manager to do stuff, but that'll be the next thing we change. So one of the things with using Wayland as your window manager, which is way better than a lot of them, it has a lot of compatibility issues with Windows stuff. Yeah, register later. Well, it opened a virtual desktop, but it doesn't look like it's starting. So it's not, at least it's not explorer.exe, so that's good. It's hanging on something. Anytime now, baby. Come on. Hey, is it doing it? Something happened. It's black. It's white. Oh, yeah! We got it! All right! Did you hear that? You got audio. Ooh, what's happening here? This is so exciting. I've never seen this before. This will all be content for the future. So, that worked, making it a virtual desktop. Also, I guess there's a Sistine Chapel painting, and it's a naked guy. He needs to be a little more naked, you know what I mean? Ooh! Oh, I like this music. All right, so first off, right, this is a window. It's not capturing the mouse at all. It's, let's see if it actually interacts. Looks so far that it's detecting the mouse, which is good. So go to game options, screen resolution. We're gonna want 1920 by 1080. I'm just gonna max this out and see how it works. Night mission lighting, full screen play intro. So when you're running in a virtual desktop and the software thinks it's running in full screen, it's gonna fill up the entirety of the virtual desktop. Okay, resolution. I would like to restart the game now. Register later. All right, let's just see if that works. Now, when you start fucking around with settings, though, weird shit might happen. Let's just give it a minute. Just give it a minute. See if it works. Yeah, we'll get this in editing. Don't worry. Yeah, baby. I gotta just say that. There it goes. All right. Come on, honey bunches of oats. Give me something. Yeah, there we go. And now it's full screen, although I got this white bar up here. That's my problem, not yours. All right. Oof. Wonderful. And it's not crashing. So the other thing you gotta do, right? The other thing you gotta... Oh, see? Now it's not detecting the mouse. Oh. That's annoying. Okay, so now we've learned that that's too big. It's not gonna work. It doesn't like those options. So you can fuck around with things and find out. And I gotta say, you troubleshoot your way through this, most of the time it'll work. Just remember, you see like weird duplicate things like that, or you know, oh, it didn't work. Just keep changing settings until it does. Most of the time it'll work, but not always. You know, it's software dependent. What are you gonna do?
Did you like that one? And, you know, if you like this, then you should check out some of the other videos, you know, maybe the channel. definitely like and subscribe. Check out highly videos. That's really planned out. It was a high quality production. Like that one. If you like the channel, then definitely like and subscribe to this videos. Yeah, it's really planned out. It was a high quality production. Videos.